Electronics information. For the questions in this section, select the best answer for the question. 51. What atomic particle is responsible for creating electricity? A. Nucleus. B. Neutron. C. Proton. D. Electron. 52. What value is the rate of the flow of electrons through a conductive medium? A. Voltage. B. Resistance. C. Current. D. Power. 53. If an electrical circuit has a current of 10 A and a voltage of 50 V, what is the resistance? A. 0.05 ohms. B. 5 ohms. C. 250 ohms. D. 5 watts. 54. How would you connect a set of 6, 10 amp, 12 V batteries to achieve a combined power output of 36 V at 20 amps? A. Series. B. Parallel. C. Series parallel. D. Parallel series. 55. What are the options for permanently splicing electrical cable? A. Soldering, wire nuts, and electrical tape. B. Soldering, electrical tape, and crimping. C. Electrical tape, crimping, and wire nuts. D. Soldering, wire nuts, and crimping. 56. What does the following figure represent? A. Transistor. B. Capacitor. C. Resistor. D. Switch. 57. If the primary input to a transformer is 1,000 V, and the output is 20,000 V, what is the turn ratio, and what kind of transformer is it? A. 20:1, step up. B. 120, step up. C. 20:1, step down. D. 120, step down. 58. Why should you properly discharge a capacitor before working with an electronic circuit? A. Because the retained electrical charge of the capacitor can shock, or even kill you. B. Because static electricity from your hand can damage the component. C. To divert static electricity from your body before you work with any other components. D. To ground the equipment. 59. If a circuit has a resistance of 20 ohms and a current of 10 amps, what is the voltage? A. 20 W. B. 2 V. C. 0.5 V. D. 200 V. 60. What is the overall power output of a generator that has a current of 15 amps at 35 V? A. 2.33 W. B. 525 W. C. 0.428 W. D. 233 ohms. Mechanical comprehension. Using the knowledge that you gained from Chapter 7, Mechanical Comprehension, choose one answer. 61. A man is using 60 pounds of effort to lift a 240 pounds crate. What is the mechanical advantage in this situation? A. Ma equals 14400. B. Ma equals 4. C. Ma equals 0.25. D. Ma equals 1. 62. How much work does a 5 HP engine do per minute? A. 33,000 feet-pound per minute. B. 110 feet-pound per minute. C. 2,750 feet-pound per minute. D. 165,000 feet-pound per minute. 63. What force must you exert, vertically, on the handles of a wheelbarrow 4 feet from the axle of the wheel to lift a weight of 250 pounds that is concentrated at a point 2 feet from the axle? A. 75 pounds. B. 125 pounds. C. 250 pounds. D. 4 pounds. 64. What is the pressure in psi of a tank of water that measures 8 feet square by 14 feet deep? A. 6.07 psi. B. 62.4 psi. C. 14 psi. D. 64 psi. 65. What is the mechanical advantage of a wheel and axle, where the wheel has a radius of 8 inches, and the axle has a radius of 4 inches? A. Ma equals 1. B. Ma equals 8. C. Ma equals 4. D. Ma equals 2. 66. What is the minimum exerted force needed to lift the load illustrated in the following figure? 200 lbs. Effort. 2 ft. 4. A. 100 pounds. B. 200 pounds. C. 50 pounds. D. 150 pounds. 67. What force must you exert on the handle of a jackscrew 12 inches in radius if the pitch is 0.350 inches, and the weight of the load is 2,000 pounds? A. 9.28 pounds. B. 2,000 pounds. C. 1,000 pounds. D. 24 pounds. 68. A mass of air has a pressure of 15 psi and a volume of 80 square feet. If it is compressed to a new volume of 40 square feet, what is the new pressure? A. 80 psi. B. 15 psi. C. 30 psi. D. 40 psi. 69. Based on the setup illustrated in the following figure, what is the effort required to move a 400 pounds? Load 1 foot off the ground. 1 foot. 400 pounds. A. 4 pounds. B. 100 pounds. C. 400 pounds. D. 200 pounds. 70. A 400 pounds barrel is rolled up a 16 feet plank to a platform, whose vertical height above the ground is 4 feet disregarding friction. What effort is required to move the barrel? A. 25 pounds. B. 1,600 pounds. C. 400 pounds. D. 100 pounds. Automotive information. Select the best answer for each question. 71. What is the fourth stroke of a 4-stroke cycle engine? A. Exhaust stroke. B. Intake stroke. C. Compression stroke. D. Combustion stroke. 72. What function does 30W oil perform in a gasoline engine? A. Lubricates the transmission and other drive-train components. B. Lubricates the engine components and systems. C. Lubricates the wheel bearings. D. Lubricates the power steering. 73. What device would you use to stabilize your car when you jack it up? A. Wheel chocks. B. Parking brake. C. Jack stand. D. All of the above. 74. What system translates the energy created by the engine into motive force? A. Differential. B. Piston. C. Wheel system. D. Drivetrain. 75. What does a distributor do? A. Distributes electrical current to the proper spark plug at the proper time. B. Distributes fuel to the proper cylinder at the proper time. C. Distributes oil to the proper cylinder at the proper time. D. Distributes power to the proper wheel at the proper time. 76. What is the function of the piston rings? A. To connect the piston to the piston rod. B. To maintain pressure in the combustion chamber above the piston, and to keep oil from getting into the combustion chamber. C. To connect the connecting rod to the crankshaft. D. It is the ring at the top of the cylinder that seals the head to the cylinder block. 77. How often does TDC occur during a 4-stroke cycle? A. 1 time. B. 2 times. C. 3 times. D. 4 times. 78. What is the purpose of the head gasket? A. To provide oil clearance. B. To provide leak protection around sliding or rotating shafts. C. To seal in combustion pressures from the cylinders. D. To seal in bearing grease around axles. 79. What is the purpose of the valve train? A. Opens and closes each fuel injector port at the correct time. B. The stem that lets you put in a tire. C. Coordinates timing of the spark plugs. D. Opens and closes the intake and exhaust ports at the correct time. 80. What is the energy output of an automotive battery? A. Alternating current. B. Static electricity. C. Direct current. D. Distributed energy. Shop information. 81. Measuring tools are used to determine the dimension of an object by comparing it with which of the following? A. Blueprint. B. Standard. C. Scale model. D. None of the options provided are correct. 82. To indicate a perfectly vertical line, you should use which of the following? A. Micrometer. B. Caliper. C. Plumb bob. D. Carpenter's square. 83. What is the tool depicted in the figure that follows? A. Box wrench. B. Socket wrench. C. Allen wrench. D. Die. 84. Which saw blade would produce a finer, cleaner cut? A. 8-point blade. B. 10-point blade. C. 12-point blade. D. All of the above cut the same. 85. What part of a saw is illustrated in the figure that follows? A. Kerf. B. Nose. C. Heel. D. Toe. 86. Which of the following tools would be most suitable for cutting a metal pipe? A. Ripsaw. B. Hacksaw. C. Coping saw. D. Router. 87. The purpose of a tap is to do which of the following? A. Drill large diameter holes. B. Provide electrical power for a welder. C. Cut threads into the outside of a pipe or rod. D. Cut threads into the inside of a hole. 88. What is a dado? A. A wide slot cut across the wood grain. B. A tool used for slicing thin layers of wood. C. The groove cut by a saw's blade. D. A circular, small-toothed drill bit. 89. Which of the following statements does not apply to a mallet? A. Useful for tapping dowel pins into place. B. Has a soft head to absorb shock of impact. C. Can be used in riveting. D. Unable to pull nails. 90. The long, narrow stem of a rivet is called which of the following? A. Mandrel. B. Filler rod. C. Neck. D. Post.